Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another live chat with James here at the ProPix TV studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Tonight we're going to talk about several things. The RCMP in Canada have announced that Mr. X, that was an individual unnamed in the Air India bombing case. They suspected that this individual was actually involved in the testing of several explosive devices prior to the Air India travesty that happened in June of 1985. Just recently, of course, people have been remembering the victims of that June 23rd attack that took the lives of 289 passengers. The RCMP again have noted that they have finally identified Mr. X, who they were unclear of the identity, and over the last several years have put a lot of resources into the identification of that individual. They have also confirmed that the individual has passed away since this time, or the time of the incident, and therefore, due to privacy laws and the fact that he has not been found guilty in a court of law, or that formal charges were not brought to the courts prior to his death, so they are not releasing the name of Mr. X. However, again, the party that they were looking to identify, again, Mr. X, in relation to the Air India Flight 182 bombing, has been identified by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. In that regard, they've also come out to clearly state that the case is still being investigated. It is still classified as an open investigation, an open file, and they do continue to work the case to find any other individuals who may have been involved in the worst terrorist attack in Canadian history. As people recently were out and not celebrating, but remembering those who were lost, this information is a big update that's been 40 years in the making. And tonight we'll also take a look again at fire updates from across Canada with the major wildfires burning from coast to coast. Several areas, including the province of Saskatchewan, has come out, the province of Manitoba has come out and announced that they have taken the steps to eliminate the provincial state of emergency. So that means that they feel that the fires have been downgraded enough and that they are making enough progress that they don't require federal intervention for the extra additional resources. That's not to say they will not still use military or other personnel to fight the fires that are going, but in terms of command and control, they feel that they are able to handle it after a very tough couple of weeks of fires in the province. We will also take a look at Donald Trump's ceasefire announcement for the Middle East. When it comes to Iran and Israel, will this ceasefire continue and will it be successful? We will have to wait and see, but we'll look at that a bit more in depth, including the fact that Donald Trump was the one that ripped up the deal that had been made back in the Obama administration during Trump's first tenure as president of the United States. He tore up that deal because it was made by President Obama, even though his own staff and advisors implored him not to do so because that deal had been working. Had that deal been in place, of course, we would not have seen the death and the bombings that have recently happened in that 12-day war. Moving on from that, we'll also take a look at Donald Trump getting another defeat in court, where the courts in Boston have said that he cannot ban Harvard from accepting foreign students. So we'll look at that and the economic impact of foreign students on the U.S. economy. Further to that, we'll take a look at the ongoing battle with the bird flu and influenza, avian influenza that is, H5N1, and also updates on the court process for the British Columbia-based ostrich farm when it comes to the culling orders, once again put on hold. So we'll cover that a bit more, as well as other stories that are of interest and importance from around the globe. Once again, thank you for joining us here at ProPix TV. I am James Cousineau coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. Don't forget that you are always welcome to put your comments in the comments section and add questions or topics that you would like to cover and discuss. By all means, this is a show that is open to everyone to come together and chat and talk about significant impacts or events. But let's start the show tonight, ladies and gentlemen, with a big congratulations. The Abbotsford Canucks have won. Yes, they are winners of the Calder Cup for the first time a Canadian team has won since the 2017-2018 season, when that was won by the Toronto Marlies. Once again, the Vancouver farm team, the Abbotsford Canucks, have won the Calder Cup. Congratulations to the team and to all of the other teams throughout the playoffs who had a great play, made it a challenge, and really put the Abbotsford Canucks to the test. And again, congratulations to the Abbotsford Canucks. Also, specifically to Manny Malhotra with his first season behind the bench as the head coach for the Abbotsford Canucks. It was great to see him win a championship, as he was at one time a Vancouver Canuck who I thoroughly enjoyed watching. His career with the Canucks was ended with a significant and major eye injury that the Canucks had concern about him coming back and it impacting his safety on the ice. It wasn't about his production or his ability. It was more that they had concerns for his personal safety on the ice with the eye condition and the eye injury, whether or not it would heal enough to make sure that he was safe on the ice. During that debate and that time period, Manny Malhotra did leave the team. He went on to play several more seasons in the NHL successfully. And again, now is the head coach of the Abbotsford Canucks with a championship. Yes, a Calder Cup under his belt. So congratulations to the team. Congratulations to Manny Malhotra. And again, let's hope that the Vancouver Canucks can win this next year. Not the Calder Cup, but the Stanley Cup. So let's hope that it brings some luck our way for the next season. Congratulations to all of the team, the support staff, and the trainers and everybody else at the Abbotsford Canucks. Thanks again for bringing so much excitement to the sports community here in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. Well done, guys. Let's move on, though. Let's take a look at Donald Trump's loss again in a court down in the United States, of course, in Boston this time. And this is at the hands of a Judge Allison Burroughs of the U.S. District Court in Massachusetts, who decided that Trump's recent presidential proclamation was a violation of the university's constitutional protections and part of a retaliatory campaign by the Trump administration that Donald Trump had waged. This is not shocking. We know that Donald Trump uses his office to retaliate against anyone who he deems an adversary to himself or to his agenda. Now, the White House said the proclamation against international students coming to the U.S. to study at Harvard was for national security purposes because Harvard wasn't properly vetting incoming scholars from other countries. But let's face it, whose job is it to be vetting students when they apply for a student visa? That is at the hands of the Customs and Border Patrol or immigration departments. That is up to them to vet the students and to issue the visas that they require. So again, it is just a lot of hot air out of Donald Trump making up bullshit in order to target those that he doesn't feel are falling in line to his agenda and his orders. So my deep respect to Harvard for standing up to this bully and for putting their foot down to protect the students. Now, when you are training and teaching the future generations that will lead the nations, to lead the world, to lead medical research and all of these other amazing areas, it's essential that they understand about ethics and dedication and commitment. And I would say that Harvard has shown their dedication to the students, they've shown their commitment to the students, and they have shown that they will not bow down to bullies who want to take away the rights of those looking to get the education that Harvard provides. Now, we know that Harvard is an Ivy League school with a rich history of not only educating the general public around the globe, but also to create leaders of tomorrow, to create scientists, to create Peace Prize winners, Nobel Prize winners in different areas. So it was very important that this decision was made and that Donald Trump again got knocked down a peg or two by the courts. Now the question is, will he actually respect the orders of the courts, or is he going to try to find another slimy way to maneuver around the courts as he so often does? Now, Burroughs wrote in a 44-page opinion on Monday that the case is about core constitutional rights, and they must be safeguarded. Freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and freedom of speech, each of which is a pillar of functioning democracy, and as an essential hedge against authoritarianism. And again, we know that Trump is looking to rule through authoritarianism and dictatorship. So again, a great decision by Judge Burroughs. Now they said to hear the government's efforts to control a reputable academic institution and squelch diverse viewpoints, seemingly because they are, in some instances, opposed to this administration's own views and threaten these rights. To make matters worse, the government's attempts to accomplish this, at least in part, on the backs of international students, she wrote. So again, a great decision by Justice Burroughs, and it shows that when people stand up to bullies, they can come out on top. And that is a very important topic, a very important lesson to tomorrow's leaders. Now, as the federal judge on Monday blocked the Trump's administration from implementing their plan to bar the foreign student or the foreign nationals entering the United States to study at Harvard, the bigger question is, why is it just Harvard? If the Ivy League schools are now responsible for national security by vetting the students in terms of the position that you have government officials who issue the visas are supposed to be doing, what exactly are the government officials doing if they are not taking care of that responsibility and taking that seriously? Now, almost 6,800 international students attended Harvard in its most recent school year, and that makes up about 27% of the student population of the university in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And again, when you look at the numbers, you're looking at over $500 million annually in fees and student costs that they bring into the economy there, and that is looking at Harvard alone. When we take a look at other areas and other states, of course, it accumulates astronomically for the U.S. economy. Now, in 2023-2024, in that academic year, international students contributed over $43.8 billion to the U.S. economy. Yes, that's billion with a B. So again, how much do they contribute? A great amount, I would say. Now, the contribution supported over 378,000 jobs in the U.S. Again, not something to turn an eye to or turn a blind eye to, because that has major impacts. When you add into the equation that they also contribute to consumer spending, where international students spend money on various goods and services, housing, food, transportation, healthcare, clothing, entertainment, technology, and so much more. So again, the money that they bring into that to the government coffers as well as the local economy and the spin-off economy is substantial. Now, California, New York, and Texas were among states that saw the largest economic contributions from international students. In California alone, international students contributed an estimated $6.4 billion and supported 55,000 jobs. So again, not to be taken lightly. When we look at Harvard, let's break it down a bit by tuition and fees. Now, international students at Harvard generally paid full tuition, which is $59,320 average for the 24-25 academic year, plus room and board and other mandatory fees totaling at $27,606, bringing in a total of approximately $86,926 per student. With approximately 6,800 international students, Harvard could potentially earn over $591 million annually. So again, that is just an amazing amount. Now, when you take into account also international students at Harvard, again, we're looking at Harvard, that they contribute significantly to the local and national economy. For example, in Massachusetts alone, they contribute approximately $4 billion. And that's annually, according to the Washington Post. And of course, when you look nationally, you again are looking at in the tens of billions of dollars, potentially up to $50 billion a year, that is brought in nationally in the U.S. by international and foreign students. Now, at risk, of course, is Donald Trump's continued attack on people who are in the U.S. legally. Again, he's supposed to be targeting, according to his plan and his platform during the election, is that he wanted to target those who were in the country illegally. With that said, of course, we've seen him taking aim, or at least ICE taking aim at places of employment, places of worship, places of educational learning and higher learning. So again, it is not about the violent or dangerous criminals that he would like the everyday Americans to feel or believe that he's targeting. Instead, of course, what he is doing is targeting anybody that he possibly can, and therefore to detain them, push those numbers up and make it look like he is tough on immigration and tough on illegal migrants in the country, when it is instead a fabrication and a padding of those numbers. Another high level of corruption within the United States government at the behest of Donald J. Trump. So again, we need to ensure that the integrity of the Constitution is not only adhered to, but that it is protected for future generations, given that it is the basis for which everything great in the United States has been formed, founded, and developed upon. So again, for that, I say that, we're probably going to be looking at, from an international standpoint, here in Canada, we may see more applications for foreign students to come to Canada, where they will feel a higher level of safety and security from government overreach. So again, we'll watch and see how the numbers play out over the next year and see how those applications happen. Now, as a caveat to that, Canada has, of course, brought in new restrictions, tightening up the numbers that are accepted for student visas, as well as other visas to enter the country. This will, of course, block a big increase in the number of students and the number or the amount of revenue that's brought in to Canada from international foreign students. But again, we'll watch and see what the demand is for both sides of the border. We know already that just tourism alone, given the policies and actions by the Trump administration, has dropped by tens of billions of dollars a month across the entire U.S. So again, it's all about how these policies are being implicated in as really catalysts for people to avoid the United States, whether that's students, whether it is professionals looking to do research or development, academics, or even just everyday tourists. So again, it is playing a big part of that curb, and we'll watch and see how it continues to impact the U.S. economy. Now, at a time that we are talking about safety, security, and the U.S. administration, it's really hard to understand why it is that Trump is taking certain actions. Now, is he actually a person who has negotiated a long and lasting peace agreement and ceasefire between Israel and Iran? We have yet to see, but at the end of the day, I am not a Trump fan. I do not like him. I do not trust him. I think he's the scum of the earth. But at the end of the day, if he has indeed been able to negotiate that ceasefire and been involved in it, and it actually lasts, then I must give him credit for that. Because if he can take something that's been going on for decades and find a way forward in a peaceful way, then I must again acknowledge that. that could be a massive success. But let's also not gloss over the fact that there was an agreement made with the International Atomic Energy Association or agency many years ago. That was actually negotiated through the Obama administration, and it was very effective. It was being respected, it was working, and when Donald Trump came into office during his first term, he ripped up that agreement, even though his own people were telling him not to do it. And really, just really emphasizing the fact that it was working in a manner that was really beneficial to the world. They had agreed to the very strict, and actually the strictest, of nuclear weapon development. So they were being monitored to ensure they were not doing that, and also monitored for ensuring that their uranium enrichment programs were actually being used for the purposes in which it was intended and not being stockpiled aside for nuclear weapon development. Instead, when the U.S. ripped up that agreement, of course, Iran pulled back and pulled out of the agreement in the monitoring that was going on. That brought more instability. It allowed Iran to reinstate any development or potential development of the weapons of nuclear capabilities. And now we need to find out if there were indeed weapons of nuclear grade, or if they were actually on that path and close to having nuclear weapons. Or is this just another claim by the U.S. to divert attention away from other issues? And one that we've seen in the past where there were claims of weapons of mass destruction that never actually materialized and never actually were located. Again, is the U.S. trying to divert the attention away from a big bad bill, or as Trump calls it, a big beautiful bill? Is he trying to put attention away from the fact that the Epstein files have not yet been released? And let's face it, we suspect that Donald Trump's name is all through those documents. And in my personal opinion, I suspect that there may be a delay in releasing those documents until they can be retouched to remove the Trump name from those documents. But that's just my suspicion, because I have absolutely no faith or trust in Donald Trump and his administration. I think he's about as corrupt as any politician has ever been in the history of the United States, and right up there at the top of many of the most corrupt worldwide in the history of the world. So again, that is my opinion on Trump. I think he is just an egotistical, egocentric piece of crap that you can't trust anyway. When Donald Trump ripped up that agreement back in his first term between Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency and others, it really opened the floodgates to other countries looking to develop nuclear weapons as well. They looked at it as a point of, if the U.S. enters into an agreement and they decide later to just rip up that agreement, that they don't want to follow it, that they don't want to respect the grounds and the terms of their own negotiated settlements, then what is the point of entering into an agreement with them in the first place? I think that that has been even more emphasized through Donald Trump's trade war of recent, and the fact that the world is looking at him, shaking their head, saying, you are criticizing trade agreements as the worst deals ever, when he was, in fact, with his first administration, the ones that negotiated those deals. When Donald Trump talks about trade deficits, he does not get it through his head that it does not mean it is a subsidy to a country. You're not subsidizing, you're buying more from one nation than they are buying from you in dollar value. Plain and simple, it makes sense. There are, 40 million people in Canada versus 400 million in the States. And, I know the numbers aren't exact, but the point being is that when you have 10 times the population, of course you're going to need 10 times the goods. So again, it's just common sense that doesn't seem to make it into the Oval Office. So with that said, we'll move on from ranting about Donald Trump, because he is really, honestly, not worth the breath that we take. Now let's take a look at one of the stories I touched on at the top of the program, and that is Mr. X has been identified. Now, police in British Columbia believe they have solved that 40-year mystery, and they had only referred to this individual as Mr. X because they didn't know his actual identity. And that was the individual who had been seen testing explosive devices in the woods prior to the Air India bombing on June the 23rd, 1985. Now, they did not and will not be releasing this individual's name. Again, just looking at the privacy laws that surround such a situation where the individual has been found to be dead before they were able to make any arrest or to proceed with charges against the individual. Therefore, the person has not been given the opportunity to prove themselves in a court of law, and the evidence is just not 100% conclusive, although it is greatly believed this is the individual. It's not 100% conclusive that it was. Now, what had happened is prior to the Air India Flight 182 explosions that happened and the worst terrorist attacks in Canadian history, CEASEFIRE, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and the RCMP had been monitoring the actions of some individuals that they felt may be involved in potential terroristic attacks or other acts of extremism. When that happened, they had witnessed several individuals going into a wooded area where they shortly thereafter heard the explosions, and that was apparently the testing of the explosive devices that may have been used in the attacks on Flight 182 and the explosion that happened at the Narita airport in Japan, taking the life of baggage handlers there as well. Now, of course, we know that when the attack happened and that killed 329 people, most of those were Canadians. The flight, actually both flights where we talk about primarily Flight 182, but there was another flight that was targeted as well. Only by luck, by the fact that the people who had placed the suitcase bombs on the flights miscalculated daylight savings time or forgot to factor into the situation, the daylight savings and such, that the bomb went off at the airport instead of on the second plane. So that saved a lot of lives there. But unfortunately, again, several Japanese baggage handlers were killed in that explosion. Now, the police said in an email that investigators had uncovered information relating to the suspect that they believed was involved in testing those explosives. And that is, again, big news, as we just recently remembered and attended events and other things to remember the victims of those flights on that tragic day. Now, of course, as I said, the investigators have confirmed that the suspect is deceased and therefore will not be releasing the individual's name. Now, the police also said in a later response that investigators made extensive and deliberate efforts over the last several years to identify the suspect. And again, seeming that they were successful in that, although unfortunately it didn't happen sooner. Now, a 2010 Commission of Inquiry report heard that Canadian Security Intelligence Service officers watched Mr. X among a group of suspects entering the forest on Vancouver Island, where the bomb test was heard. And that was just, again, a few weeks before the bombs were placed on those two planes. Now, once again, they were called out, and they said it was a matter of an ineffectiveness of CEASEFIRE in their pre-bombing surveillance, and that was by one of the people who did the report, calling them out for not having a camera as they were watching those individuals enter the woods. They could have had that photographic evidence that really saved a lot of time. Now, when we look at the Air India attack, the only person that was ever convicted of involvement in the attack was alleged bomb maker Inderjit Singh Rayad, who pled guilty to manslaughter in 2003 and was later convicted of perjuring himself to protect his conspirators. whether or not he was actually at the control of what happened, or if this was a false flag event by the Hindutva extremists in India or the Indian government. It is not known, as again, two men, Rapudaman Singh Malik and Ajay Singh Bagri, were acquitted in 2005 after a trial that cost almost $60 million. But again, since that time, other information has come out that questions whether or not they were scapegoats in that investigation and set up by the India government or others, or if it is as the investigation led us to believe at that time. But we'll leave that for another report, because we really don't know which way or the other at this point. Now, to summarize it up, the bomb on Air India Flight 182 exploded over the Atlantic Ocean, killing everyone on board, while that second suitcase bomb exploded before being transferred onto an Air India jet, and that again killed two baggage handlers at the Tokyo's Narita airport. In a statement just recently, that Prime Minister Mark Carney said the tragedy is one that Canadians must never forget. Again, being the worst act of terror in Canada's history, it is also one that that really brought forward the need to remember the victims. And as such, June the 23rd is a National Day of Remembrance for victims of terrorism. And on that day, we remember the victims of the Air India bombing and all others who have lost their lives to terrorism. And Canada's new government unequivocally stands against terrorism, and they state that they will deliver on the mandate to change and to keep communities safe. Now, as other politicians and others were taking the stage on Monday to really mark that important day of remembrance, ceremonies happened both in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and in County Cork, Ireland. And that was, of course, the main point of contact on the shores outside of Ireland, where Flight 182 exploded over the Atlantic Ocean. So again, we will leave it at that, and hopefully more information will come out over time. And again, a total of 331 civilians, including those two baggage handlers at the Narita airport, should forever be remembered in the history of Canada, in the history of world terrorism, and to be remembered as the innocent victims as they truly were. So again, we will follow that if new information does happen to come up upon any of the reports, and any further information when it comes to the Air India flights. And also we are watching other information coming out on the CSIS 2024 report. That's the Canadian Security Intelligence Service has recently released their 2024 report, looking at the risks of and threats against Canada, both from foreign lands as well as domestically on Canadian soil by foreign actors. So again, we'll keep you up to date on that as we review the report in the coming days. Let's give a quick overview of the Canadian wildfire situation. Now, at this time, there are still fires burning from coast to coast. New fires, and this is information as of yesterday. So again, as of yesterday, there were 6 new fires that were burning across the country. 302 active fires. Year to date, 2,222 wildfires have been burning across Canada. A huge number for this time of year, of course. And as I said at the top of the show, certain regions are now out of the emergency declaration. So the states of emergency in some regions has been lifted, which is good news, but there is still massive fires burning across the country. So far this year to date, in terms of hectares, the area burned is 4.1 million hectares so far this year. And of course, we are still early in the fire season. So again, if you're going out into the wilderness, it is essential that you practice fire safety and take it seriously. Some people think that just because it may be a little damp on the top of this soil, that they're safe. But again, don't be leaving fires fires burning, don't leave them unattended. Don't be lighting fires, even if they're in a contained unit, such as a fire pit or something to that nature. If it is really windy, it can blow the embers and the ashes into nearby trees or roofs of homes and so forth, and really spark something devastating. So again, be fire smart out there, folks. At this time across Canada, let's break down the number of fires that are burning. Once again, as I said, there are 302 fires currently burning across the country, from the Yukon threatening Dawson and other regions right through to the Maritimes and everywhere in between. At this time, in terms of out of control classified fires, there are 102 currently burning out of control. In terms of fires being held, at this time, it's 36 from coast to coast. So again, 36 fires are considered being held. Under control are 94, so good news that 94 of the fires are now under control, and hopefully they can be brought even further down to a lower number in the coming days. Out of control but monitored are 70 fires. Essentially, when you're looking at that, these are fires that are out of control. There's not necessarily active mass targeting in terms of resources to put them out. They are not a threat to nearby communities, and sometimes they allow them to burn to a certain point. And once again, that number is 70 from coast to coast. For a further breakdown in British Columbia in terms of current fires, you have 78 in British Columbia, 77 in the Yukon, 54 in the province of Alberta. Up in the Northwest Territories, you're looking at 16 fires. And I should go back to the Yukon and state that up in northern Canada, they actually are experiencing quite warm weather that is unfortunately not helping the situation any. And they are expecting potential bad weather to come in. But again, that could come in the form of lightning strikes, and with an already tinder dry forest, that could contribute or exacerbate the situation even worse. There are, again, a number of evacuation alerts and warnings across the nation, so pay attention to your local fire region as well as your provincial region. You can do a search online, whether it's through TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and other apps, to find their alert system so that you can download that or just follow them on your social media and make sure that you are kept abreast of the latest developments when it comes to wildfires and other emergencies and disasters that potentially could hit your area. Of course, now we are continuing on the list. There are currently 16 fires, in Saskatchewan. That's 18. My apologies. 18 fires currently burning in Saskatchewan, 22 in Manitoba, and then we look down to Ontario, where there are 27 current fires burning. Quebec is numbered at 2, but there are some smaller ones burning as well that are not calculated into that figure. And then Newfoundland has 4, Nova Scotia 1, Prince Edward Island, congratulations. They are the only region with no fires currently in the list. And when it comes to federal parks land, they have 1 listed as burning in a federal park area. So again, use your fire smarts out there, folks. Pay attention to the fire bans, to fire regulations, and the fire threat safety levels. With that, if you are in provincial parks, regional parks, or federal parks, pay attention, because they may have different levels of risk. They may have different regulations and restrictions in place. So pay attention to that as well, regardless as to where you are this summer. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe and help to contribute to a less disaster-prone summer than we've seen in the past. Once again, you've been watching ProPix TV. I am James Cousineau, coming to you in Vancouver, British Columbia. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to touch on one more issue, and that was the ostrich farm, the Universal Ostrich Farm in the Kootenay region of British Columbia. The owners have gone to court once again in order to try and prevent the cull of their 400 ostriches. At this time, the court found that there was grounds for them to have a stay of cull, meaning that they do not immediately have to put those birds under. The next hearing date will be July the 21st, so they have a bit of a reprieve until that time in order to convince the court when they go before the judge that there are grounds to keep the birds from being culled. This, of course, was in response to an outbreak in December and January of the avian influenza at that farm that took the life of several birds. The concern, of course, is what they call the stomp out practice, that when there is a outbreak of the avian influenza on a farm, in whether it is a chicken hatchery, an egg farm, commercial or small, community-based farm, there are reasons why they want to cull them all, and that is because it is costing us billions of dollars a year for these outbreaks, and it is getting worse. Around the world, we are seeing an increase in the avian influenza outbreaks. We're seeing also an increase in foot and mouth disease in cattle and swine flu in pigs. So it is an essential time to take all proactive steps to prevent further outbreaks. With this farm in particular, they have been fighting with the government to try and save these ostriches that they have been breeding for decades. They have chosen the best birds in terms of their breeding program and been able to basically modify or at least perfect to some level the birds that they are breeding there. They also provide valuable information from their farm and from their facilities for research on a global scale in terms of different poultry issues. So this is a valuable asset to the province, to the nation, and to the world. But again, there are policies in place to protect the overall bird population from the outbreaks of the avian influenza and H5N1. With this said, of course, we at ProPix Canada have an AI division that is utilizing the combination of AI algorithms, proprietary programming, and equipment to actually detect the bird flu and the influenza much earlier than at current rates. And as we move forward at this time, of course, we are in a fundraising project or investor round, which we are actually working with various levels of government and various investors to raise the $25 million to take it to phase 2. This project and the investments is very important, not only for sustainability of the food source and the food chain, supply chain, but also to reduce the rates of infection when it comes to the avian influenza, to catch birds that are showing signs earlier, and this way you can get them isolated from the other parts of the flock and hopefully reduce the bird flu on a global scale. So again, this AI and technology program is getting ready to go into phase 2. If you're looking for AI agri-tech investments, by all means reach out to us at ProPix Canada at gmail.com. That's again PROPICS Canada at gmail.com if you're interested in being involved in whether investor, donor, or other way, maybe a partner in some regard with the AI technology that we're developing. We are currently in talks with various government agencies across Canada and around the world as well. So we hope to get phase 2 moving ASAP in order to expedite the development of this program so that we can help to intervene with the avian bird flu. With that said, of course, the AI systems and technology that we are utilizing in terms of equipment, physical equipment, as well as AI systems, will be able to be scaled to all different size of facilities, from small backyard coops to large-scale commercial egg breeders, egg farms, all of that. but also we'll be able to scale it to other animals down the road, and that will help to identify early stages of foot and mouth disease, of bovine diseases, swine flu, and so many other illnesses that impact the food chain on a global scale. So again, if you are interested in learning more about that, reach out to us at propixcanada@gmail.com. And even if you are not looking to invest or to donate or to help in other ways, if you're just curious about the technology and what we are doing, by all means, feel free to check it out. You can always go to propixcanada.com/agtech, and that will give you some further information on our technology, our platforms, and what we are doing in the exciting field of artificial intelligence and helping to preserve and create a higher level of safety within our food supply. Once again, you have been watching Live Chat with James from the ProPix Studios here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to leave your comments, like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget that you can also share this with others. Thanks for tuning in. Take care, everyone, and stay safe out there.